to Resurrection Sunday. I did my announcements. I checked my box. Incredible. We are in John 20 this morning, along with everybody else on the planet who follows the Revised Common Lectionary and is a Christian, so that's pretty exciting. We are going to kick off reading from John 20 together. It's in the Slack. It's right here. You can also read along in your favorite translation, any of the above. Great. John 20, verse 1. Now, on the first day of the week, Miriam, the Migdal, that means the tower. It's a title of hers. It's a fulfillment of a prophecy from Tanakh, from the Old Testament. So Miriam, the Migdal, came to the tomb early while it was still dark. And she saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. So she ran, and she came to Shimon Petros and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved. And she said to them, "They have taken away the Lord from the tomb, and we do not know where they have put him." Then Petros and the other disciple went out and were going to the tomb. And the two were running together, and the other disciple ran ahead faster than Petros, and he came to the tomb first. Bending over to look, he saw the strips of linen cloth lying there, though he did not go in. Then Shimon Petros also came following him, and he went into the tomb and saw the strips of linen cloth lying there, and the face cloth that was on his head, not lying with the strips of linen cloth, but folded up separately in one place. So then the other disciple who had come to the tomb first also went in, and he saw it and believed, where they did not yet know that the scripture that it was necessary for Jesus to rise from the dead. Okay, so if we can turn off our lullaby effect, if we grew up in the church, there are some things here that we can notice. The first thing, if we go to the next slide, is that even in darkness, the disciples showed up with all of their panic, their confusion, grief, disappointment, skepticism, trepidation, and anger, and they were still found by God. Spoiler alert. And so can we. So if you've only ever heard the story or read it in a certain way, many of us were raised to hear Miriam saying, "They've taken my Lord, and I do not know where they have put him." This kind of like breathless Victorian energy, because she's a female character, and that's the only way that we ever speak, actually, is, "Oh." However, if there's lots of room for different interpretation, and if you look at what she says, you can also read it with a great deal of anger, right? They have taken my Lord. I'm here. I'm trying to do the right thing. More on that later. And they have done something with the body of Jesus, and I don't even know where. Many of us have those theys in our life, the people who just feel like they keep showing up, they keep getting in the way, they keep ruining the things that are good. And maybe we feel anger about that. Maybe we're angry at other Christians, maybe we're angry with the world, maybe we're angry with God, but that's the posture that Miriam or Mary brings into the tomb, and that's still where she meets God. There's that back and forth that the attention in the story usually goes to, why does John care so much about everybody knowing he was faster than Peter? Which there's reasons for that other than possibly ego. We'll see. We can talk about that later. But one of the emotionally moving things is he gets to the tomb first and he starts to peek in, and it becomes too much for him because Jesus isn't just this theological point, this part of an outline of soteriology in our systematic theology of how do we get saved. We believe in Jesus. To John, Jesus is a friend. He's somebody he spent years with, walking every moment of every day with his rabbi, and he goes to look and he sees that there's some fabric, and whether Jesus is there or not, he can't bear to see either the dead body of his friend or to see that he really has been stolen, that something has really happened to him. So he doesn't look. And Peter, who comes up behind him, says, "I'll do it. I'll be the one to carry that emotional load for us. I'll look and I'll tell you, and then you can decide whether you want to look." So there's this moment of beautiful mutual care and support. In the story, right, they both believe Miriam enough to go and check in the first place. So they're there for one another. But all of these different feelings might be feelings that we're bringing with us this morning. feelings of panic about the world, confusion, grief about what's going on in our personal lives or in the world. All of these things are things that we might encounter. Disappointment, right? Disappointment that Jesus was supposed to be the Messiah who was supposed to free them from Rome. They were supposed to now be free from oppression. And none of that would happen. Skepticism is what our friend Miriam really saying. Is that really true? Could that really be? Trepidation, anger. They were still found by God in that place. They didn't have to solve all of those emotions first. They didn't have to go and we love therapy, but they didn't need to go and have like their therapy session and break it all down and solve all their feelings and journal it out and then come to the tomb and then be met by God, right? It's in the midst of our chaos. It's in the midst of our emotionality, which God gave us, by the way, that there God meets us. Not after we finish our reconstruction, not after we finish our therapy, working through, processing all the things. God is accessible now. Okay, next thing we can notice is that even in darkness, Miriam is still faithful, right? So she has all of her emotions, and also she's faithful. What's she faithful to? She still tries to tend to her friend's body, despite the danger. What danger? Well, both the religious authorities and the crowds and Rome were all complicit in the death of Jesus, right? And so if Miriam, one of Jesus' disciples, probably notably so because she is a woman, is spotted out and about in the world, that might not go over so well. And yet she still ventures out of the upper room where everybody has locked themselves away. Literally, they locked the door because they were afraid of the crowds. And she goes out with a group of other women we see in other stories. And they say, no, we're still going to do the right thing. The right thing is to still to care for our dead friend. That's very much a part of death and grief in this world as well as the one 2,000 years ago. If somebody dies, it's not just a oh no, this unjust murder happened in the streets. That's so sad. Now we're going to talk about it. Somebody still has to go and take care of the body and pick it up from the coroner's office and arrange its transport to the funeral home. They have to talk to the mortician, right? They have to decide how it is that the friend is going to be laid to rest. That is so much work. If you've ever been in that space of having to figure those things out, the friends of Jesus had to figure those things out too before they were stymied, which imagine the anger there as well. She redeems Petros' unfaithfulness by seeking out Jesus 3 times. So many of us have heard about Peter and his betrayal. The night that Jesus was on trial, Peter is outside. He's around the campfire. He's worried for himself, but he's trying to listen to how Jesus' interrogation is going. And a servant girl comes up to him and says, oh, you're with Jesus, aren't you? And it's not even a threat of death. It's just a question, though we don't know exactly how loaded that question was. And 3 times he responds, what? I don't know him. What are you even talking about? Leave me alone. He does that 3 times. And Jesus has to redeem that moment with Peter later on the beach. By the fire, having brunch, he asks him 3 times whether Peter still loves him. And yet, in this story, we also see Miriam redeeming the unfaithfulness of the disciples by stepping, perhaps, into the role of first disciple here, because she seeks out Jesus' body, or the presence of Jesus, you can also say 3 different times. So we haven't read the other 2 times yet, but she is going to say, where have they put Jesus? I'm looking for Jesus. Have you seen Jesus? 3 different times, which is a beautiful inversion of what happened the night before or 2 nights before. And she doesn't say, where is Jesus? She says, where is Kurios? Or where is Adonai? So even though Jesus, they had figured out that he was Messiah, they had figured out who Jesus was, and they were calling him Lord, not just Rabbi. Kurios or Adonai is what's used throughout the text, almost all the time to talk about God, right? It's not just like Sir, or where's, what's the Spanish version? Senor. It's not just Senor, it's Lord. It's Adonai, it's Kurios. She's still calling him that, even though he has died. She's still holding on to her faith, even in the midst of her grief, even in the midst of her anger, her disappointment, her confusion. She still holds both things to be true. So for us, we might come today with things are going pretty great, actually. And maybe you don't resonate with any of these things that we've been talking about, and that's okay. And we're stoked for you that your life is going really well. Wonderful. Tell us more. But let us learn your ways. But for those of us who are showing up, and we do have all that disappointment, that skepticism, that is not the end of the story, right? It's not just, I'm in a place of a lot of disappointment and confusion right now. There's a semicolon, and still, and yet, I can also still be faithful to do the next right thing that God has given for me to do. I can still be faithful to who I really know that God really is. The way that I've experienced God, I know to be true. Mary could have gaslit herself, right? She could have said, did those things really happen? Did he really do those miracles? Maybe I misunderstood. I heard his voice say this, and I understood it this way. But maybe that wasn't really true. She doesn't do any of that. She says, no, I still know that he's Lord, and I don't know what's going on now, and I feel angry, and I feel sad, but he's still my Lord. And we can still do that. Next part of the story, 20. So the disciples went away again to their own. But Miriam stood outside at the tomb weeping. Access to her emotions. She's still being present to how she feels. She doesn't have to choose between one or the other. Then, while she was weeping, she bent over to look into the tomb, and she saw two angels in white, one seated at the head and one at the feet of where the body of Jesus had been lying. And they said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have put him." That's number 2, if you're keeping track. When she had said these things, she turned around, and she saw Jesus standing there, and she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Who are you looking for?" And she thought that it was the gardener. And she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will take him." There's number 3. Jesus said to her, "Miriam." She turned around and said, "Rabboni," which means teacher in Hebrew. Jesus said to her, "Do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, and my God and your God." And Miriam the Migdal came and announced to his disciples, "I have seen the Lord," and that he had said these things to her. Okay, one other thing to get out of the way before we go to the next point. If you're not a huge fan of being called woman, I'm with you. And yet it's actually a quote from 1 Samuel. It was said to Hannah when she was crying. If you're familiar with the story, Jesus' mom, Mary, she quotes Hannah when she becomes pregnant with Jesus. It's this whole thing. And so if you're really into that stuff, go Google it right now. But that's what that quote is from. That's why they're calling her that, so that it's a nice little tie into the story that she would have known really well. Okay, now we can go to the next thing. In the resurrection, when Jesus pursues Miriam 3 times, she discovers that Jesus can no longer be taken away from us by them. So she said these 3 times, they have taken him away, they have taken him away. Maybe she means she's worried about the Roman soldiers, right? In other stories, Roman soldiers are passed down on the ground, and so she's like, there's some kind of scuffle, there's some kind of fight. My oppressors have taken them away. Maybe it's the church people who don't want a martyr to be venerated, right? And so the Pharisees, the Sadducees, they've come and they've taken Jesus so that he can't be worshipped even in his death. Maybe it's the crowds. Maybe they said, "Oh, our bad," and they've gone and taken him somewhere where he can be venerated. It's when she's seeking him out and when she is saying, "They have taken them," that's when she discovers Jesus. And because of the resurrection, because Jesus is not confined to one human form anymore, he's not walking around just as a person in one spot geographically in the universe, that means that for all of us can encounter Jesus wherever we are in our own life, in our own world, in our own street, in our own state of being, and he cannot be taken away, right? There are all these forces in the world, especially in our country, that say if you don't believe X, Y, Z, and ABC about the country and about your religion and about Jesus, well, then you're not actually in the in crowd. If you don't have the kind of relationship that looks this way, and you don't have this kind of family structure, and you don't vote in this direction, then you're not really a Christian. No matter what is said, no matter who is in power, they, whoever they might be in your world, in your life, they cannot take Jesus from us, right? We sing that song about wrestling with belief, and yet it ends with yes, Jesus loves me, because that is the thing that we can hold on to. Jesus can never be taken away from us, which also shifts the personal responsibility for a relationship with God onto us, right? Because if we just have the narrative that, my faith used to be really important to me, and I experienced God in these significant ways, but then this thing happened in my church, my pastor turned out to do this thing, or 2020 happened, and I don't like what went on, and so they took my relationship with God from me. They can't do that. They don't have the power to do that, which is good news, because it means that if God is still accessible to me and you, no matter what, even if it's been years, or even if it's been 10 minutes, we can still re-encounter Jesus today because of the resurrection. In the resurrection, there is still work to be done, both by the gardener and by the first apostle. So it is with us. Okay, so the other thing in the story that we tend to go, ugh, especially if you read a translation where Jesus says, "Don't touch me," which feels very like, I love that. Jesus being like, "You'll make me dirty." That's not what's happening. That's not what he says. He doesn't say, "Don't touch me." He says, "Do not cling to me. Do not adhere to me." Why does he say that? Does Jesus hate women? Does Jesus not a hugger? I don't know about him being not a hugger. It seems unlikely. But why does he say that? Because he has a job for her to do. First off, for him, he appears as a gardener. That's a little nod and a wink, because there's lots of Garden of Eden symbolism in the story. So God is the gardener. We experience God as someone who's slowly weeding out the things which are choking new life and slowly watering the seeds. That's that time of year. That's the way that God works. Sometimes it's a crazy crossing of the Red Sea moment, but most of the time it's the slow work of God that reaps fruit of joy and love and peace and righteousness in our life, right? So Jesus still has work to do. He's going to go appear on the road and explain the whole Bible to some people on a walk together, which is cool. But he also gives a job to do to Miriam, which is so significant, because Jesus could have said, "Hey, I know that in this particular time and also in the present, people don't love to listen to women, and so I'll come with you and we can walk through the wall together, and then you can get credit for seeing me first, but that way everybody will believe you, and then you can sit there looking enraptured while I talk about myself." He doesn't say that. He says, even though he could have done it by himself even without Miriam, he could have said, "Go back, I'll meet you there." He says, "Go and teach my brothers and sisters about what you have seen." To go tell them what you have seen. So in a lot of church tradition, especially the Orthodox community, Miriam is known as the first apostle, because she's the first person to behold the resurrected Jesus, and she goes and teaches about the resurrected Jesus. But if we look at that last line, what is her first sermon? Her first sermon to the disciples is, "I have seen him. I've encountered God." And so usually there's like this push about evangelism on Easter. I don't know, maybe that's part of your history with Easter in the church, maybe not. But if there is something that we see in this resurrection story about sharing the good news that Jesus has come back from the dead, it's not unpacking all the theology. It's not nailing like, well, this prophecy was fulfilled and this one isn't yet because he's got to come back again. It's not nailing all of those beats and points. It's saying, I've encountered God. I've experienced Jesus. And that's the only thing that we need to be able to have an authentic relationship and connection both with God and another person, right? If we're like, I'm on mission to tell you all these things, that can go over really well and also can go over not well. But if we're having authentic relationship with other people and Jesus is an authentic part of our life and we're experiencing him and encountering him throughout our day and throughout our life, just sharing that is enough. That's enough work for the first apostle to do. It can be enough for us to do as well. So in the resurrection, Jesus still has work that he's still doing. He's still putting the world back together. And we are also invited to partner with him in that. So we'll jump to our takeaway slide here. 2 things that hopefully can stick with us, can cling to us, one might say. Number 1, we can be courageously present to our emotions and still be faithful to God. It's there that we can encounter him. So those 2 things, they're not separate, right? We don't have to figure out one and then the other. They go together. We can be angry and do the right thing. We can have grief and still do the right thing. We can not know exactly what God is doing and still say that God is Lord. Those things still go together. Number 2, in pursuing Jesus and his work, he can never be taken away from us. When we are pursuing him, that's when we find him pursuing us, right? Because there are people who didn't get to see Jesus raised from the dead. Passover is a giant pilgrimage holiday. So a bunch of people came to Jerusalem. They saw the Messiah riding on the donkey. They yelled, Hosanna. They yelled, save us. They went, they had their Passover meal. They heard, Jesus is killed. That's a bummer. Thought he was the real deal. And then they went home, right? That was the end of their story. But because Miriam was able to be faithful, she was able to encounter God. She found that he was still searching. Versus if we're just staying at home and we have our eyes covered and we say, I have all this disappointment. And we never also engage in the other half, the other thing of faith, then we might not notice, we might not see when and where God is pursuing us. So those are our takeaways. I'm going to pray. I always do that. But we'll move into a time of communion, the Eucharist. If you are not used to that here, we practice an open table, which means that if you are excited about celebrating the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, you are welcome to participate with us. There'll be no one with a clipboard asking you to sign a doctrinal statement in blood before you do so. But if you don't know what that's about or you're not interested in it, please don't feel pressured to engage with that with us. You can hang out in here and just sing with me and Tyler. But so we'll go in there, we'll come back, and we'll sing. And what are we going to sing about? But God, who takes the things of this world, who takes our brokenness and doesn't just say, I make space for that. He transforms it. He does the sacred divine alchemy and turns it into new life. That's what our God is in the business of. And so as we take communion together, as we participate in that feast of the Lord, what we are encountering is the fact that God is in his brokenness and his new life that came out of his brokenness. We can also bring our brokenness and experience that new life. There is gluten-free sourdough. There's regular sourdough. I think it's labeled. There's wine and there's juice, and I think that's also labeled. Now I'm going to do the things. God, I thank you that every year we get to talk about this story. That with the church tradition, the church calendar, every single year we get to spend time talking about the work that you like to do. The work of taking dead things and making them alive. We thank you that we can together say suffering is bad and darkness is bad and death is bad, that there's nothing that we need to put aside and try to become more expansive to the idea that maybe some people just should be murdered. Murder is always bad. You being murdered was also grievous, and yet that was not the end of what you were doing in the world. You were using that and taking it and growing something new and beautiful and powerful, transformational, transcendent out of that. I thank you that you can do that in our world as well. I pray that you would bless this communion. Bless this feast at your table, which is a foreshadowing of the table that is to come, the new earth, when we all get to see you face to face as one big family in many different languages, many different nations coming together to celebrate you. And pray that you would be with us in your name, Jesus.